everybody, and welcome to everybody's favorite youth baseball podcast show, Clearing the Bases, featuring Coach Jimmy, Phil, and Jerry. I'm David Friedman, and I want to thank you for coming along this journey with us. How are we doing today, Coach?
We're doing good, Dave. I think I can officially say that I'm done with baseball. Well, I'm done with practice.
Whoa, that's a huge announcement.
Well, for the season.
Okay. I was like, wow, man, I'm going to have to find a new partner. This is going to be rough.
No, I mean, we're done with practices. We're done with games. So now this is, I guess you would say, my off season. Meanwhile, we're still doing clinics. We still have college coaches camps coming up, still doing lessons, but the games and practices are done.
Yeah, it's something I've only partially joked around with for the last, 7, 8 years now, is that baseball is 11 and a half month sport. And so, yeah, you get a little bit of reprieve here or there, but you're always looking to that next topic that you got to jump on.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up before we get into it is one of our local players, 14-year-old boy was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor recently, which was very, very devastating to the community. And yesterday there was a 5K run that was held by his travel baseball team. They're called the Newburgh Knights. And I got to tell you something, Dave, we talk about community and that sense of community and seeing the community work together. Well, I mean, I got to tell you, there was, from the latest report that I heard, there were 1,100 people that turned out for this event to show support for this kid. His name is Jet Diaz. And it was just a beautiful thing to see.
That's fantastic. Great kid. You've told me quite a bit about him. I know you know him. Sounds like just a fantastic kid. Horrible situation to happen to anybody, but certainly when it's somebody that you know and you have a relationship with, obviously it hits home. We both have kids, and can't imagine what not just the kid but the family is going through dealing with something like that. If you haven't been there, you just have no idea. It's different. What I do know from my experience, it's different when it's a child. It's not the same as, parents get sick, but you expect to, that your parents are going to hit things. Siblings, they're the same age you. Obviously, any given day, something can come up. But when it's somebody that's younger than you, especially that age, that's rough. And heart goes out to them. Hope all the love and support that we as individuals and the show can offer to them. Let me ask you, do they have any type of a GoFundMe page or anything set up?
They have a site set up where you can go and you can donate money. If anybody's out there and wants to, donate, you can look my Facebook page up. There's links on my Facebook page. You have to search a little bit for them, but they're there. So if anybody did want to help out, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the baseball community in general is usually pretty close knit. Kids change teams from time to time. People move to, next neighborhood over. So then they're in a different league and all that stuff. So it seems like with the baseball community at large, a lot of big hearts, a lot of people always willing to jump in and help with things like that. So listeners, if you can, as much as we appreciate all the support that we get, but if you could support us on this cause, that would be fantastic. Great kid. And, we're all pulling for the best one.
Yeah. And actually, maybe another way to find it is, I'm sure if you did a search on the internet and search for jog for Jet, and Jet is spelled with 2 T's, so it's JETT. There's something should come up where there should be a place where you could donate and help out.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. Anything anybody can do, obviously, it's always appreciated. So we're talking about baseball, and we like to make it kind of a light and hopefully interesting, sometimes funny show. And but it is important to bring up important topics like this that where maybe we can make even more of a difference.
Absolutely, I agree.
So on to back to direct baseball topics. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Our listening ship just keeps growing, which is fantastic. Want to thank everybody for jumping on, subscribe, rate, review the podcast, any type of source that you're using, whether it be iTunes or Spotify or what have you. We definitely appreciate all the support that you guys give us. You can reach out to us on Twitter at the CTB show, and then drop us a line on email, clearingthebases@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Critique us, give us ideas for other shows. If you're interested in coming on, we're happy to do it. If you have your own show out there and we want to do, we're happy to have you on and promote both shows. And we've had some real interesting conversations as of late.
We've gone through, a few episodes there where we had guests. I mean, I think it's a great idea for maybe go back to do a show where you and I will beat each other up a little bit. What do you think?
Hey, that sounds great, Jimmy. It's been a while since we've done a one-on-one, so let's go ahead. Let's get into it. I know one of the topics we had talked about, and I try to have some bullets in my gun here in terms of things I think are going to be funny or interesting, or hopefully maybe both. We can talk a little bit about some of the things we've seen through the years. I mean, between the two of us, you're talking about, I don't know, 30 years worth of coaching experience, something like that, maybe a little bit more on and off. Some of the situations that we've seen through the years of maybe things that we've done, but more than likely, what we've seen some other coaches do that either we would laugh at or cringe at or want to go throttle somebody at. So I think, I've got a few, I definitely have a few saved up here. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I could come up with a few. I'm sure that there's a few things out there that I look at it as if somebody is out there and they're coaching, and I know that you agree with me on this, and they're doing the best that they can. Whatever they do, their style, their way of doing it, is their business. And I tip my hat to them. And hey, you're trying to help the kids. I think what we're going to talk about is when you see these guys that are out there and they're not helping the kids. And these are the things that probably, I think the word you used, was cringe, makes me cringe.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and definitely there's plenty of that out there. And we'll preface it by saying we're not saying anybody that did this stuff. I mean, some of the examples that I have here, we'll keep the names removed to protect the innocent type of thing here, or not so innocent in some of these cases. But some of these moves were made and decisions that were made or things that were said were by people that I do respect and had overall good experiences with. And this kind of falls down to nobody's perfect type of thing. So some of these are not that case. Some of these are just bad. And they're people that I think they may be good baseball coaches, but they might be bad people or bad youth coaches type of things. Right. But yeah, I mean, that's some situations that we have here, but others are maybe one-offs that, somebody said something and maybe they regret it. Maybe they don't, who knows? But I'll give you an example. Had one situation, and a lot of this is going to be, again, we'll leave the names out, but a lot of these are going to be ones that my kids were involved in, either teams that they were on or they were playing against, because obviously that's where I have the most of my experiences from. First game of a doubleheader, player was pulled for an injury, and I think he had back spasms or something like that. But he had I think he had gotten hit by a pitch. Somehow he wound up on first base, but he couldn't, he wasn't able to move well, whatever. So pulled the player out, put another player in to run. And it wasn't, not that this matters, but it wasn't a big tournament. It was just a regular doubleheader, travel ball Sunday. And the other player ran. And after that half of an inning, they put the original player back in the game, pulling the player that they put in as a pinch runner. And keep in mind, this is youth baseball. This is 13-year-olds, I think it was. Well, the player that went in to run is now done for the game, because obviously once you substitute, you can't go back in the game. And the player that was pulled for injury after 12 minutes is now not only good enough to play, but good enough to play at a higher level than a player who's at 100% that you could have left in the game. And I'm sure there's people that would argue this point with me, and I don't even know if you would, but to me, that was ridiculous. Now the kid that you put in knows he can't go in. First of all, he can't go back in because he was already used. And what message are you giving to that kid? Okay, we are so afraid of putting you into the game that we're going to put somebody out there who was just too hurt to play minutes ago, and that's your place on this team.
Right. Right. Well, where I'm going to go with this is number one, it's very difficult at the youth levels, 13, 14, maybe even as high as 15, to know when a player is actually hurt. Or I should put it this way, if he's hurt enough that he can't go on in the game, or if it's just a little, bump or a little bruise and he can keep going. I know that I struggle with that a lot, and I always try to err on the side of caution where in a situation like you just explained, if the kid said to me, well, I'm hurt and this and that, well, there's no way I would put him back in the game. What's the purpose? Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb here. All right. And you're going to be able to help me with this, I hope. But I assume that the reason why the kid was put back in the game is he was probably one of the team's better players, and the coach was probably trying to win a game. Am I wrong?
Well, I have to assume the coach was flat out trying to win the game. I mean, he was a starter. Obviously, it was early in the game. I think might have been the first inning, which is what made it even worse for this other kid who's now sitting on the bench without question for 6 more innings. It was 7-inning games.
Yeah.
But again, that's one of those things where I'm looking at, like, if the drop off from that player to the next player is so far that you're afraid this is going to cause you to lose the game. And that's why, because that's the only reason to make that change back.
Right.
To me, that's ridiculous.
I agree with you with you 100%. And going back to what I was saying before about, not knowing really if a kid is really hurt bad or is not hurt bad. Because again, I've had many situations where maybe a kid didn't want to do something and all of a sudden he's hurt, but yet he can't, let's say he can't pitch, hey coach, I can't pitch. My arm is bothering me, but I can go out and I can play shortstop. Well, so again, you understand what I'm saying, where it's hard to tell how hurt they really are. But what, in this case, what would have been the harm? I'm assuming from what you said, it was the first inning. What would have been the harm to sit that kid until, say, the 4th, 5th inning? He said, hey, you know what, coach, I'm fine now. And you can put him back in the last couple innings, fine, but the other kid got to play. I mean, that's reasonable, I believe.
So that's where it just, and I know it's, again, heat of the moment. I'm not killing the coach for it. But it's just like certain decisions like that. And it is something in retrospect, I could think back where the coach made a number of decisions that not just as a parent, but in the grand scheme of things as a baseball coach and what's best for the kids as a whole, do these things make sense? So to sit 3 innings out of the 300 innings that you're playing that year, right, or whatever it was, it's stuff like that. Just, it drives me crazy. Like that short-sightedness is that really what's best for all of the kids?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it many times. Coaches sometimes don't look at it from a standpoint of, let me again err on the side of caution with this kid. They look at it like, oh, I'm in the middle. This is a heated battle that I'm in. Meanwhile, the kids are 13 years old, which the game really means nothing.
It's a doubleheader.
Let the kids sit. I mean, and again, I'm basing this off of the assumption that he was one of the better players. That kid probably doesn't sit much anyway. So here's a perfect opportunity. Sit him for the rest of the game. Give the other kid a chance. What's the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing where I say, like, I'm not killing the coach for the one move, because it is a team where everybody got decent playing time. It wasn't a situation where kids went game after game after game without playing. And that's even more to your point of, so he's sitting so maybe he sits the first 3 innings instead of the last 2 innings. It's a bizarre decision. But like I said, I think the ramifications could be much more serious with that the kid that you put in and then pulled back out with his psyche in a situation like that. Because the kids know the rules.
Right. I agree.
It was my biggest complaint through the years the term I term guest players. Okay, it's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
I'm sure you've seen a million times through the years, and whether it be just for a weekend or for a tournament, more than likely, like, oh, we're going to bring in this kid and that kid, and they're going to come in. And it's fine if you're missing players. You don't
yes,
want to go into, you can't go into a tournament with 9 kids or 10 kids, even can be really, really tough. Again, the odd chance somebody gets hurt or somebody throws their arm out and whatnot. So it's fine to add a few bodies, but to me, it's got to be with the caveat that they're reserve players and we'll
yeah,
get you in when we can. Probably not charging you anything to be there. I mean, there's so many aspects of this, and this could be a whole show in itself, probably, because I could talk
exactly.
about this for hours. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the biggest. Well, I don't want to say the biggest complaints because one of the biggest complaints I hear is about coaches. But next to that, I would say that people, rightfully so, upset about bringing in guest players, and they're playing the whole game. Meanwhile, the regular player from that team is sitting on the bench. I mean, what goes through somebody's head to do something like that? I don't understand. So
Yeah, and I've called out a couple of coaches for it, and it just doesn't go anywhere. You get the typical responses. Well, this isn't little league. Nobody's guaranteed to play, and yeah, I'm not. If the kid was sitting because other players on the team were playing, I get that. I don't agree with it, but at least that's what you signed up for. Like I think every team, every coach basically tells the team that travel team says that from the get go. There's no guaranteed playing time. We're going to do our best to get everybody in, blah, blah, blah. So as much as I disagree with kids sitting constantly in that realm, because again, unless you made some special arrangements with the kid, if he's good enough to be on your team, he should be playing at least, a decent amount of time. But when you're bringing in somebody from the outside and sitting a kid, there's just no excuse for that.
no, there isn't. There isn't. And that argument about, well, this is travel baseball, there's no guaranteed playing time. Well, I mean, that's a really narrow way of looking at things, I believe. I think we've talked about this before, where yes, there is no guarantees of anything. However, I will tell my team that you're guaranteed X amount of plate appearances per season. And it's it's not like you're going to get 20 plate appearances. It depends on the team, how many kids are on, but typically that number falls around 50 somewhere. And I preface it by saying, yes, there are some kids that are going to get closer to 100 plate appearances, but they're going to be the leadoff hitters, and they will probably be the harder working players because you want to reward that. So they will get a little bit more playing time than the kid that's not putting the work in. So, but to say that there's no guaranteed playing time, I really don't like that phrase, because people are paying money for that kid to be on the team. What are they paying for if the kid's sitting on the bench?
Right. As we've discussed before, it's a situation where, the proposal before the season starts, before the training starts, is, oh, they're going to get they're going to get the top notch training, and we're going to be working with them, and our goal is to get them up to the level where they can become a regular player or whatnot. But no game, and it's one of those things. Like I said, if you're taking a kid who is a special project, as long as you discuss that with the parents up front and you are absolutely honest, and the kid and the parents make the choice, okay, this is where we want to be, then that's fine ish. Although once you're in reality, you see, those attitudes change all the time, because obviously from the parents' perspective, oh, he did training all winter, whatever, twice a week, every week. He was out there doing all this stuff. So obviously he must have gotten better. So he should be able to play. So yeah, it's to me, just you're setting yourself up with a bad road as a coach, as an organization, when you start doing stuff like that, and reputation spreads.
Right. Right. So we went from one situation where, a kid was injured, the coach substituted a player in for one inning and then put the kid back in. And we talked a little bit about guest players. Another story that I have of something that you reminded me of when we were talking about this was, Now this is going back. This is going back a long time. So I was the director of the minor leagues. The all-star coach went up to the Cal Ripken all-star tournament. And Cal Ripken at that point, I don't know if it's changed, but Cal Ripken had a rule for your pitching that said you can't pitch any more than 6 innings consecutively, something like that. But I don't remember exactly what the rule was. But anyway, it allowed.
I'm going to just interrupt. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Again, this is going back a number of years ago, but I think it was, yes, any 6 innings between any 2 consecutive games is what I think it was. So if you pitched 3 innings one game, you only had 3 innings on the next game that the person.
Then you had
pitch.
3 innings again for the subsequent game.
Yes. Whereas if you pitched 6 innings one game, you had to miss a game, but then I think you were open again to pitch, which on a short tournament of 4 days, that's crazy because you could wind up pitching 2 full games in a 3-day period. But regardless, I think that's what the rule was. Sorry.
Yeah. So this genius that was the all-star coach had 2 pitchers that were decent pitchers. So he pitched them 3 innings every day. The first kid would pitch 3, second would pitch 3. Then the next day, they would go through that routine. When they came back, because I saw all of this, I sat him down and said, listen, you can't do this. I said, you use 2 pitchers for the whole time you're in. Well, the rule said I could do it. I said, well, yeah, the rules say you do, but I'm telling you can't do that. Okay. We're going to go by this. And at the time, I don't even know if Pitch Smart rules were out, but whatever it was, I said, this is what we should be following. And he's fighting me tooth and nail. So again, here's a situation where a coach took the health of his players' arms. Well, he took winning before he worried about the health of his players' arms, right. Which again, what do you think about that?
Oh, well, I mean, first, obviously it's terrible. The human body just doesn't work that way, especially if I remember correctly, it also didn't matter the days. So if you were playing a doubleheader, 2 days in a row with the tournament, you could be pitching 4 times in 2 days with that logic. And I mean, it's just such a domino effect of the effect physically on those kids. And then again, look at the 4th and 5th best pitchers on those teams. If they never even got a chance to get out much less the 3rd best pitcher may or may not have slid in there somewhere. One kid only went 2 innings, 1 game or what have you. But yeah, I mean, it's just, again, are you developing? What's your point? What's your point of being there? Is it just win? It's just, these 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds, whatever, like, oh, they have to win. Everybody wants to win.
But that was his argument, is that, this is a state tournament. We're trying to win.
Right. At all. I mean, it's just, I can tell you, I hate that, especially with the younger kids. And this is one thing where Little League does this, to me, my opinion. I think you'll agree with this, because I did have an experience of, most of my kids' experience was in Cal Ripken. We did have an experience in Little League. And this is still going back 5-6 years ago, so who knows what's changed. But Little League had pitch counts, whereas Cal Ripken had innings as far as their pitching limitations. And from any metric, from any logical thought about that, going innings is ridiculous, because obviously you could throw a 3-pitch inning, and that's going to count the same as somebody who threw 40 pitches in an inning, so that's one place that I really like that. The other thing was with All Stars, Little League had mandatory playing time. Every player had to get in every game, and if they didn't get an at bat, they had to start the next game. Was, if I remember correctly, was the rule, which I somebody with my mentality, I love that. Yes, we want to win. Everybody wants to win, especially All Stars, where it's win or go home. But these are still little kids that we're talking about.
Right. Win with what you have.
Right. Win with the team.
Right. Don't try and create something by destroying. Your team is what your team is. And the key word there is team. it's a team. It's not one or two kids that are going to make you win that tournament. So
Yeah,
use your
I mean,
whole team.
ultimately, yeah, you have to have these kids ready. They have to know that they're a valued member of the team. Also, if you're not getting them in the game, if you're not giving them opportunity, and then when you absolutely need them because somebody got hurt or one of your pitchers didn't pitch as well as they thought they were going to pitch, and now you're putting in a substitute. If they've been sitting riding the pine the whole time and haven't had any experience, again, mentally, where are they at? We would love to snap our fingers and be like, "Hey, time to show up. You're in the game." But that's not how not even kids. I mean, that is a seasoned type of attitude that a player has to have. Even if we see it with the high school kids, much less a 9-year-old or 11-year-old.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But that made me think of something. So on one of my sons was on a 9-year-old all-star team, and I was asked to come on as a coach. I didn't know the manager. I had not spent any time with them. So yeah, I came on to help, but I didn't know his attitudes and his philosophies, I guess I should say. And I wound up butting heads with him the whole time, basically, mostly about playing time. And again, this was not centered on my own kid. It was just in general. And it was a thing where one of the games, he put a kid in, and I kept saying, "Hey, why don't we get this kid in the game? Why don't get this kid in the game?" One of the games, he put a kid in for a half inning in the field and then pulled him back out. And
that's insane.
His thing was, I got him in the game. Yes, because every kid's dream is to play left field for half an inning. No, everybody's there to hit. Right?
Let me understand something. He pulled him out in the middle of an inning.
So he put him in. He went into the field and played. I think it was a left field for an inning.
After that half, he took him out,
and then took him out so the kid didn't get an at bat. And that's where. So again, it's like he's checking off a box. This player's in. This player's in. This player's in. I'm like, what do you think you just did to that kid's mentality?
Sure.
You know what? Again, it's kind of like what I talked about before with the hurt players. Like, you're now telling this kid, you getting up to the plate lowers our chances of winning so dramatically that we can't even afford to let you get up there.
Right.
And you can't argue anywhere against that. I'm sorry. You're never going to convince me that was the right call. And these were 9-year-old players. I don't know if I could stress that enough.
Yeah. And once again, it was, at 9, they're probably all meaningless games regardless. But yeah, it's a meaningless thing that, like you said, I'm going to go back to what you said just before you started this, that you were on a team coaching with a coach that you butted head. That's got to be miserable. How do you,
Yeah, because I would never do it in front of the kids. I would never do it in the dugout. But it was like after the game was over and when the coaches would just kind of retreat to have our little, decompression kind of sessions, I'd be like, all right, so, this kid and this kid didn't get in. So are they going to start the next game? Well, no. Oh, well, what are we doing with these kids then? Well, I don't know. I'm not really comfortable putting them anywhere or whatever. I'm like, okay, they went through all the same practices our kids did. They went through the whole season like our kids did. They went through all the practices like the other kids did. And I'm like, and you're just, what are you doing to them mentally?
Sure.
Like, that type of thing. Like, even back then, and I didn't know, I knew a tenth about coaching is what I know now. And even then, I just knew, like, how do you not know? You're around kids for any length of time. What do kids want to do? They want to be doing things. There's only so much they can take just sitting and watching.
Yeah, they want to play. Let them play.
That whole thing. Well, there's no minimum playing time, and there's not. Hey, we told everybody from the get-go there was no minimum playing time. Yes, you told everybody. That doesn't mean once you're faced with it, nobody. When you tell everybody that, first of all, 9 of the kids and their parents are fine with it because they're the starters.
Yeah.
So they don't, so they're or let's say 6 of the kids are probably unquestionable starters, and they're more than likely not going to sit with this kind of philosophy. So you've got that. So half of your team, you're already just, put them aside because the fact, are they in favor of it? Of course, because they're the kids that are playing nonstop. So of course they're in favor of it.
Yeah.
And then even like, I think after one of the games, I think he said, so, we have to make a decision. I think he was trying to shut me up at this point. And again, I never said anything in front of any other parents. I never said anything in front of the kids. I would never do that to anybody unless there was something that was physically damaging, probably to a player. That would be a different case. But so he posed to the kids. Keep in mind, 9 years old. He said, "So, do we want to make sure we're playing to win, or are we going to just play and make sure everybody has opportunity or something like that?" He said, and of course, all the kids said to win, because what are the kids going to say?
Kids want to win. Sure.
And then after the meeting, he was just like, "See, that's so. Hey, I did." And I'm like, you know what? And that's where I just kind of shut down. I'm like, I'm not going to just keep beating my head against the wall here, but I knew I would never put myself in that situation again.
Right. Well, not only that, but you asked a bunch of 9-year-old kids. I mean, who's the adult in the room?
Yeah. Well, right. That's the whole thing. Hey, why don't you ask them all what they want for dinner?
Right. Exactly.
You're not going to get a lot of broccoli and green beans coming out of there. It's basically the same thing. So, that was one of the most frustrating moments of me where I was in the dugout. I think I've talked about this before, where when it comes to my kids and supporting and whatnot, I'm either in the dugout or a coach, or I'm away from everybody because I just can't deal with the near constant bickering or just the complaining and all that stuff. So I want to do my own complaining, but I don't want anybody else to hear it. So I just remove myself from the situation when it's like that. So that was, I think first and last time that I was, not necessarily the last time, but it was definitely the first time where I was in this weird situation of, being one of the coaches, but not the head coach. So not the one making the decisions. And, my opinion started getting sought out less and less in that scenario.
Right. Well, that was a scenario that you had to get out of. I mean, you were in a no-win situation. So, nobody can blame you. You did what you could do, understanding what the right thing was. And, like we've talked about many, many times, a lot of youth coaches don't have the right frame of mind. And I'm not saying all of them, because there's a lot of them that are really, really good coaches. And there's guys out there that know, that it's about the kids. But you run into a few every now and then that don't understand it. And this is what you wind up with. It's, we talk about it all the time. The kids got to have fun while they're playing. Otherwise, what's the point? Especially at that age.
Right. That's the whole thing. That was really where it boils down to, is like, okay, great. They win this tournament and then they can go on to regionals. Great. But if the kids aren't playing, and yes, again, 3/4 of the team is going to love it. But you have to look at the whole body that you're dealing with. And I don't know what that magic age is where you can really flip the switch and say, all right, at this point, we're just playing to win. I'm not sure what that age is, but I sure as hell know it is not 9.
Right. I'll agree with that. I mean, my feeling about that. I believe that the only time when a coach has to take that stance that he is trying to win, I believe the first time that happens is at the varsity high school level. Because if the varsity high school coach doesn't win, most likely he's not going to be there very long. That's a totally different animal than, anything leading up to that. I mean, I'm a JV coach. Yes, I want to win, and there's no doubt I step on that field every time to win. However, my primary job is to prepare my players for the varsity team. That's my job.
Right. And they have to play in order to get prepared.
Well, exactly. And I was just gonna hit off of what you said about that kid that he pulled after half inning. Okay, so he's not your everyday left fielder. You're playing in this regional, whatever the hell district game, whatever you're playing in, and you have to get to know. Well, what are you going to do when your left fielder twists his ankle and he can't go on anymore? Now you have to put that kid who has no experience because he hasn't played there. Now what? You're putting yourself in a really bad situation.
No experience, and what's his confidence level?
Exactly.
Had he even been felt like he was part of the team, and you put him out there, his mental state at that point is so much better and positive. Again, you've seen it a million times. You know, the where the head goes, the body goes is really it's an old expression from wrestling, and they talk about it physically, where the head goes, the body goes, and you can manipulate your opponent. But from a mental aspect, to me, it's the same. It's the same thing. You can be the greatest physical tooled player ever, but if you're weak mentally, or you're having even a bad day mentally, there's a good chance you're not rounding the bases.
Right, exactly. Plus, and going back to the mental aspect of it, I guarantee you that kid goes out to left field, and the only thing that's going through his head is, number one, I hope they don't hit the ball to me, and number two, I hope I don't screw this up for the team, because he's never been there before. And
this is my one chance.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're the coach and you have a kid that's in that situation, well, shame on you. That should not be.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. I had a bunch of parents coming to me, again, not the parents of the 5 best kids on the team or 6 best kids on the team. But it was tough. It was a tough situation to be in, and I felt horrible for the kids.
So is it now my turn for the next story, or is it yours?
No. That was, I think I piggybacked off of yours. So,
well, no, I'm trying to make sure that we get equal playing time.
Well, I don't know. Listen, I never say equal. Adequate playing time. Adequate playing time. That's all. But no, if you got one ready to go, let's hear it.
All right. So this was probably the worst thing that I had ever seen as a coach. So, and I'm going to try and make it's a pretty long story, but I'll try and make it as short as possible. So I'm coaching third base.
Not our forte on this show, that's for sure.
No. But I promise I'll do my best. Coaching third base, my player, I don't remember, base hit or whatever, my player takes off from third. He's going home. There's a play at the plate. Remember, I got to tell you, the 13-year-old boys. First year on the big field. So, this is all a learning experience for everybody. The catcher from the opposing team happens to be standing in the left-hander's batter's box. The throw comes in. My player smartly stops before the plate and sticks his foot out onto the plate. He's safe. The ball beat him there by 10, 15 feet. If the catcher was on the other side or in front of the plate where he should have been, my player is out by a mile. But the catcher was in the other batters, on the opposite side of the plate of the runner. Right. The coach went ballistic, and he pulled the kid out of the game, and was yelling and screaming. First of all, pulled him out right after that play, came out and got him right out of the game, screaming and yelling at the kid. Told him, the kid sat down on the bench next to the coach, and the coach actually said to the kid, "Don't sit near me. Go down the other end of the bench. I don't want you anywhere near." Now I'm at third base, and they were in the third base dugout, so I hear all of this. Steam is coming out of my ears because I wanted to wring his neck, but I had to keep my mouth shut. I didn't want to be, create one of those scenes. So anyhow, after the inning's over, the other team comes in. The coach goes out in front of the dugout, calls everybody to him. The kid comes walking out of the dugout. He turns around and he looks at the kid and he says, "Not you. You're not part of this team right now. Go back in the dugout." I sat there. I must have been giving him looks that if looks could kill, he would have been dead probably about 6 times. But I couldn't say anything because I knew what it would have led to. Come to find out, that was the coach's son.
Oh, that poor kid is done.
All right. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that?
Well, and listen, it's oh boy. So now you've got it from twofold. As one is trying to tell another coach how they should coach, and then the bigger topic is telling that father how to be a father. So you want to talk about taboo topics with somebody. Certainly, nobody as a coach. A lot of guys, I shouldn't say nobody. In the heat of the moment, most coaches don't want to hear from another coach, hey, you should do this, you shouldn't do that in the heat of the moment. Again, when we're looking at videos online or having Zoom calls, it's different. But as a parent, somebody wants to come and tell you that you're doing something wrong with your kid. I mean, them's fighting words, to use an old expression. So, how do you handle that as an outsider? How do you handle that as somebody else who's on the team? I mean, that's again a situation where if you're in the dugout, imagine you're one of the other coaches on the team, and you have basically no choice but to pull him aside at some point and say, I mean, that's what I talked about earlier, where I would never do something, in front of the team or in front of the players. That's one of those cases where I'd like to think maybe I would, but I don't know. I've been faced with that, not quite that bad. Not when it was their own kid and the kid was singled out. I've been in situations where coaches were going crazy on their team as a whole. And I have one specific, again, when the kids were 9, this coach is screaming at his kids. He's turning purple, spit's flying out of his mouth because they lost this game. It was an all-star game. So, oh my God, it's a 9-year-old all-star game. It's the end of the world. I mean, and I'm just standing there and like, I'm looking at the parents from that team. Like nobody's going to jump in. And I know, I don't know, was this a travel team or an all-star team? Do you remember? I don't know if it matters.
I think it was a travel team. It had to be a travel team because I remember the field we were playing on. So yes, it had to be a travel team.
So, I mean, that's one of those things where I understand, and I think we've talked a little bit about this on a couple of the shows before, as a parent, because remember, I for our listeners out there, I've been more in a situation as just a parent and not a coach than Jimmy has. He's almost always been, when his kids were playing, he's almost always been the coach also, whereas I've had a mix of being a coach and not being a coach for my kids. And it's tough where, as a parent, if I complain too much, if my kid likes being on the team and I complain too much, is my kid going to get punished type of thing? Is my kid going to be sat? Is my kid going to be ostracized by other kids or the coaches, or, are we not going to be invited back next year? Now, in this particular case, I think I would go running from the team if I saw something like that. But we don't know the full story there. It might have been an area where there's not a lot of teams. There's not a lot of options, and maybe as a parent, Joe parent, I'm not comfortable starting a team myself. Although I don't know how you could do worse. But, maybe this guy is a great trainer, is just a horrible coach. So, there's those types of decisions that parents have to come into play. But because on the one hand, you immediately think, how did you not have 10 parents jumping on this coach and saying, what the hell are you doing? But you don't know the full story.
Right. I could say my point of view on this. No, he's not a good trainer. No, he's not a good coach. And what I mean by him not being a good trainer, because if your catcher fielded the ball that way coming from the outfield, that is a direct reflection on how you're training him. And I don't know anybody that would tell their catcher to stand in the left-handed batter's box to receive the ball. So my point is that there's nothing good there that I could see from that little snapshot that I saw. There's nothing good there. That's somebody, in my opinion, that should never be near youth baseball coaching kids. There's just nothing good there.
So sounds like it. I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, it's a small snippet, but it's also one of those things where you say, well, it's almost like just in general in life, when times are good, you find out who your friends are when times are tough, right? It's not when everything's going well. And it's kind of the same thing there where, like, okay, he's a good coach 80% of the time, 90% of the time. But if for that 10% of the time, if that's how he's going to react, the trade-off can't be worth it.
Right. And I would say that if that's the way he reacted in that situation, chances are that's his makeup.
Right. It's not the first time it's not the first time that that's happened. That it seems unlikely that he went 0 to 100 in that one moment. You
Right.
know, just a totally isolated incident. Seems pretty unlikely because that's a pretty damn extreme reaction
Right.
to something.
Right. Right.
You know.
So that was, I think, talking about being in situations where we saw coaches do things that were less than desirable. I think that is my number one on my list of something that I saw that I literally, I'm not even afraid to say it, believe it or not. I felt so bad for that kid that I literally had tears in my eyes when I was at third base because I knew I couldn't do anything about it. And I felt terrible for that kid.
Yeah, it's one of those things where in retrospect you look back and like, could I have gone and said anything? Could I have done this? Chances are, if somebody's that unreasonable, and even you're talking about after the game, so now it's not even the total heat of the moment. After the game, still reacting that way, that's who that person is. So a confrontation there, you're probably leading to a fist fight.
Right. And you're 100% right. And it's also a situation where, thank God that somehow, some way, somebody said something that I understood that it was his son, because I would like to think, not that I would like to think, I know that in a situation like that, more than likely after the game, if I was able to get that kid or see that kid away from his coach or away from his team, go over and put my arm around the kid and say, hey, buddy, it's not that bad. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Try and build the kid back up where, I mean, I understand it's probably not my place to do that, but if I could see an opportunity where I could do that, I might do it. So I think it was a good thing that I did hear that it was his son, because then all bets right. Then I said, no way, I cannot say anything to this kid.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's because then if you get the kid, now if the kid starts mouthing off to the dad, what's going to happen there? You know, it's just, that's rough. I mean, I would hope somebody from that team, another coach from that team, the parents from that team, the players from that team, after, you know, outside of that moment, I would hope that there was a change that was made there. I mean, right. You just think back and like, you just think about what kind of life that kid has, because like you said, chances are that's not an isolated incident.
Sure.
You know, and even if that was the first time the dad said something like that to the kid, as far as, you know, don't even come to the team meeting, you're not on team. Maybe it's the first time he said that, but how many other, you know, minor infractions has that kid had to put up with through his life at that point? It's just, yeah, definitely heart goes out to him.
And just for coaches out there that are listening, and I'm sure I probably don't have to say this, but you know, if your player and your players, especially at 13 years old, they're going to make mistakes. Keep a pad with you or make a mental note. Hey, this didn't go right. This is what we're practicing at our next practice. It's that simple. There's no reason to get upset. If they're not doing something or they make a mistake, what they're going to do, they're going to make tons of mistakes. Those are the things that should develop your practice plan for your next practice. We didn't do a rundown right. Okay, next practice, we're going to do it. In this case, we didn't field the ball right on a play at home plate. Okay, we're going to work on that. That is your opportunity to teach right there. And it's in black and white right in front of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's something what I started doing this year, for the JV team, when I was coaching first base, is I was using my phone as a recorder. So I could, when I was in the dugout or even when I was at first base, and I felt the need, I had to explain to the parents, hey, I'm not checking my email when I'm out here. If I have my phone out, I'm making notes, because again, during the game, how many situations come up that you think of, oh, we need to deal with this next time. We need to deal with this next time. Right. And then you forget about it, because there's infinite things to work on when it comes to this stuff. There are infinite things to work on. So I started doing that. It was really, really helpful to me. So a little friendly tip out there from Coach Dave. That's a way that you can keep a record of things. And again, I wasn't typing in, I was just speaking using the voice recorder, so that we could remember that these are things we wanted to talk about after the game and things to deal with at the next practice.
And I think that that is fantastic. Somebody had mentioned that, I don't know, speaking to somebody, or I listened to another podcast or something where somebody had said about using a voice recorder. And my immediate reaction was, if I ever saw like one of my coaches with his phone out, I would have a fit. However, if he's using it for that reason, excellent, excellent idea.
Yeah, that was the first thing when I said because again, we went a few games in and it was like, even after every game, when there's the things that you want to bring up, both positive and negative, because that's, to me, you do both in the game recap when you're having your meeting with your team. And we'd be sitting there looking at each other like, what was that other thing? What was that other thing we talked about? Like, damn. So yeah, just I think it helped tremendously.
So that was my horror story.
So, and that was a good one. That was definitely a good one. And it's one of the problems when we get on these roles, and Jimmy and I have this when we have conversations outside of doing the show, where all of a sudden we'll look down and we'll be on the phone for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because it's just stories and you can go off on tangents. And it's one of the problems with this. As you're telling that story, of course, made me think of 2 or 3 other situations that I've been in that, that one might take the cake from a coach's perspective, but I did this will be a quick one. So this was I'm going to say the kids were 13 or 14. And I think, I wasn't a coach on the team, but I was in the dugout. They must have been short a coach, so they asked me to come in and help, either keep score or whatever, just keep an eye on the kids. So that was kind of my role on a couple of the teams that my kids were on, that I wasn't an official coach. It was if you need somebody to throw batting practice, or you need somebody, I really only missed one of my kids' things if I was at the other kid's thing. That was really how it worked. And anybody with more than one kid out there that has their kids in sports or whatever activity, music or art or whatever, obviously you know how tough it is to split your time up like that. But anyway, so I was in the dugout, and I wouldn't have been there if I wasn't asked to be, that's for sure. So I was in the dugout. We were at a tournament, and there was a kid there. He was a guest player, but he was one that played with us fairly often. He was a high level player, hitter, was a good pitcher, and they utilized him. I hate to even say it that way, because we're talking about, again, this might have been a 13 or 14-year-old kid. They utilized this kid when they could, and it always made me think of, I'm sure this kid is being used by, I know he's on a team, plus is he being used by other teams? So, and again, he's a pitcher, so I could only imagine how many innings this kid had on his arm by the time he where it mattered, going into high school and stuff. But anyway, so his dad was somebody who, from the second I met him, rubbed me the wrong way. The way he talked about his kid, just the way he handled himself. I don't know if he was ever even a coach or a player. I don't know what his background was, but he was like such a hard ass on his kid. And his kid was a good player. So, and it's one of those chicken and egg. Well, he's a good player because I was so hard on him and put him through all this. You could tell this kid was naturally very gifted, and he worked hard. So I remember, so we're in the middle of this. I know I said I would make this short, again, not my strong suit. But we'll wrap this up. So we're in a game at a tournament. The team was winning. The team was doing quite well. This kid was not having a great day. Not a great day at the plate. He wasn't pitching this game. He was in the field. I think he may have made an error, had not had a hit, but the team was doing well, winning handily. The kids were loud and raucous in the dugout, cheering on and all that. And they had their little, not obnoxiously, they maintained good decorum, but they were cheering loudly for their players and whatnot. And the dad looked in the dugout, poked his head in the dugout, called to his son, and said, "Hey, when you start playing well, then you can get loud."
Wow.
And that kid crumpled, basically, sat on the bench, crumpled, and just sat there looking at his shoes. And this was a moment where I wanted to go knock the guy's teeth down his throat. because I just, on the same vein of what you were talking about, the way this guy treated his own son. And again, it's like the kids, it wasn't like it doesn't matter. I was going to say, it's not like the kid, swung at a pitch over his head. It doesn't matter if he did that.
Doesn't matter. Right.
He's supporting the team, and you're telling the kid to not support the team because he's not playing well. Is there any worse message that you could give to somebody?
Right. Or is there any better argument for why parents don't belong near the dugout?
This guy, oh my God. I just like, and again, I had been around the kid a little bit, but keep in mind, I wasn't a coach on the team. So I happened to be in the dugout, but I didn't even have that much experience of dealing with this kid or being around this kid. And I basically was just like, hey man, you're doing great. You're doing great. Just stay positive, focus on, you guys know the whole thing, effort and attitude. And like, just listen, your next at bat, you're going to drill one. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. But I'm like, but here I'm in this position of correcting a parent, not just a coach, but correcting a parent to this kid. And I'm just like, okay, it was a kid who I didn't love that kid around as far as the kid's own attitude, but here you go. And this is where it's almost like a kid that says something racist. Obviously that's not inherent in the kid. It's coming from the parent. Right. I mean, and that's basically the same situation. No wonder why the kid is arrogant, because the only time he gets any love from dad is when he does spectacular.
Right.
Like that type of thing. And I was just, I was horrified.
Right. Could you imagine what that kid's car ride home was like?
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, it's just brutal. What's going through? Who's the adult? What's going through your head? It's just when you do something good, you can get loud.
Right. Like, we talk about all the time about building players up. Build them up, break them down, build them up. That's the way that works. Now, from what you're telling me, that, this parent had the attitude that, yeah, I'm going to praise him and everything is good, just as long as everything is going good. Something doesn't go right now, I'm going to kick him as hard as I can. Well, it's got to be probably the other way around. Okay. Right. Whereas, the kid's not doing well. So now this is where you want to build him up. You want to help him. You want to keep his confidence level up. Everybody has a bad day. When he's up, maybe that's the time that you might want to, talk to him about hustling down to first base or making sure that he doesn't miss signs. He's in a good frame of mind. Now's the time that you can work with him, as opposed to, beating him up when he's down. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like that. I mean, that's where, like, you talk about what are the chances that now that next at bat, that player's getting up there and doing well after getting hammered down like that. It just.
Right. I mean, the amount of pressure with those few little words that dad put on that kid, the amount of pressure was insurmountable for that kid, because the next time he got up in that batter's box, he has his dad in his head saying, geez, I better hit a 6-run, home run.
Right. Because a single's not going to make up for 3 strikeouts. Right. No, exactly. No. I need to knock one out of the next park. Right. Is basically what it is. Right. Just like I said, that just your story brought that memory back up.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know how many. Like I said, there's infinite stories. I have one that I want to finish with, so I don't know how much longer you want to go with this.
No, I mean that's fine. You know me, I'll make the show 2 hours long. I don't care.
All right. Did you? So again, that was kind of your story. I piggybacked off of that. So this is my. Well, all right. So I have a shorter one. And again, I promise it's a shorter one because I wasn't that involved on it. I was just Joe Dad. So JV team, best player on the team, as often happens, is the shortstop, and he's also, I think, he was the second best pitcher. As often happens at that age, they weren't slotting him in as a PO at that point, pitcher only. So when the shortstop would pitch, the coach would put, obviously, not obviously, He wouldn't put the next best player in at shortstop. He would put the backup shortstop in at shortstop. The next best infielder was the second baseman. Okay. So just picture this. So obviously it's JV. So you're on the big field. And the kids might have been ninth grade. So not like it's not like they've been on the big field for a long time. And the second baseman was, I'm going to say sub 5 foot, or no, I'm sorry, the backup shortstop, sub 5 foot tall, probably a $120, $130. Really good hands, really good soft hands. Couldn't make the throw. Could not make the throw. Second baseman was 5'11", $160. Really good hands, really good lateral motion. Obviously, to be second base or shortstop, there's not a huge difference there in terms of your, it's usually about the arm.
Right? I was going to say it's usually arm strength. Yeah.
It's really an arm strength issue. So never put the second baseman over to shortstop and put the quote unquote backup shortstop at second base, which is where obviously anybody looking at them would naturally say that's what they belong. We watch this all season, every game that the starting shortstop pitched, we would not get outs on any ball hit to shortstop because the kid either had to sail the ball with an arc over to first, or he was bouncing it. And yeah, our first baseman sometimes would make the play. I shouldn't say we never gotten out there. Sure, sometimes would make the play, but that's not a high percentage play when you're getting a short hops and sometimes long hops from first if it hits the grass before it comes. Our home field is not turf. Most of the fields we play on for high school are not turf. Nowadays, maybe more so, but and it was just one thing. Like every time, like the parents are all just like you see every time the kid goes running out to shortstop, and your heart goes out to the kid because it's not his fault.
That's right. It's not his fault at all.
It's not his fault. I'm sure he's not saying, Coach, the only position I'm going to play is shortstop. I'm a shortstop. That's it. I'm only going to play shortstop. And every time we're like, what is going through this guy's mind? How many times does it have to happen before you go, maybe, just maybe, I should put the close to 6 foot tall guy over there instead of the 5 foot tall guy.
Right. Yeah.
It's just, it was amazing to me.
You've heard me say many times is we want to put our players in a position to succeed. We never, ever want to put them in a position to fail. Okay. Again, it has to do with the whole mental makeup and all of that stuff. So again, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at, I don't know, is it a stubborn coach that this is the way I want to do it? This is, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one.
I think that's what I used to fall back on is just, and we've talked about it many times in the show, ego. That like, I've decided that this kid is my shortstop. And for me to move him now would mean that I was wrong. And I can't understand that mentality, but what else can you derive from that?
Right. Well, I mean, we had talked about, off the air about a situation that I had this past summer, or actually was it the fall, whatever. Where I was
blends together.
Yeah, it does. Where I was helping the new coach with a team that I had just coached for the last 8 months. And, he had a player in right field, and I kind of went over and just, poked him a little bit with my elbow and said, hey, listen, you want to get him out of there because he's not a right fielder. He barely plays left field. Don't leave him there. Let's get him out of there. And he said to me, no, I'm good. And I looked at him and I said, no, you're not. I said, if you want to leave him there, that's a different thing, but you're not good with him there. That's fine. Dave, I'm telling you, I think it was either the next pitch or maybe the second pitch. Ball was hit out to right field. And I think I explained it. It looked like he was chasing gnats. It was a night game and there were a lot of bugs out. The poor kid just could not field. He never saw the ball come off the bat that way. Right. And exact same situation is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But in this case, he had somebody telling him.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those things I did look at, like on that JV. It's like, so now I got to go to what is the assistant coach saying to him? And is the assistant coach on the same page as him, which seems unlikely that two people could see that circumstance and say that work. But then the other side of that is is the assistant coach so uncomfortable with the coach? Does he run his ship so tightly that the assistant coach doesn't feel like he can say to him, hey, maybe we should try Johnny over there instead of Charlie because this doesn't seem to be working. If you're not comfortable, again, it was almost like me with the 9-year-old All-Star team. Like, if you're not comfortable speaking to your head coach, what type of a program are you running there? And how long are you going to keep yourself in that situation? Because that was hard. I can't see any more than one. I can't see one person looking at that and not making a change, but much less more than one person going, yeah, this seems to be working great. Our first baseman loves trying to dig balls out of the dirt on every hit to shortstop.
But I would bet you, and again, I don't even know, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but I would bet you that, yes, the assistant coach would not say anything to him because he wouldn't listen to him. And this is one of the things that I live by. I have one of my assistant coaches. Well, even my son is going on 22. He'll be 22 shortly. And one of my coaches for my high school team he's 22. He's the same age as Vinny. And if one of my assistants on my high school team or my son came to me and said, hey, Dad, or, hey, coach, think about this, that, or the other thing, I'm listening. There's no way I'm shutting them down.
Right. Because if you are, what is he doing there for? He's just there. He's just there to throw batting practice or hit infield flies, but you don't trust anything. You're not looking for input from him.
I want to hear everything because you've known me for many years. I'm not the brightest guy in the world. I need all the help I can get.
All right, I'm going to leave that one alone this time. I don't want to rip too much on you, but yes, that's the thing, and that was where I was very happy. Now I knew the guy. I was good friends with the guy that asked me to help coach with the JV team this year. But he basically, there's a feeling out process. Anytime when you're coaching for the first time with somebody, there's a feeling out process, and even as the head coach, the person may say, hey, I want to hear everything that you have to say. And they may or may not mean that. I want to hear everything you have to say as long as it agrees 98% is with what I'm saying. But no, I mean, we fell into a groove very, very quickly where it was just a constant, and there's a lot of heat in the moment decisions. Should we try to pick somebody off? Should we bunt here? Should we, things that you can't take 5 minutes and have a dissertation on. So it worked out really well, but I've been in those other situations a couple of times and it's terrible. It's terrible. Hey, I've got an ego also. I think that I know a lot about this stuff. I'm not I never call myself an expert as far as youth baseball goes. I've seen a lot of stuff and I have a lot of good experience and bad experiences to build off of. But if my opinion is not valued and I'm just a body, then I'm not going to be a coach. I mean, that's just, what are you doing? That's it. Yeah. I'm happy to help out. You want me to come and just throw BP? I'll come and throw BP, but I'm not going to be in the dugout if my input is not being at least considered.
Sure. Well, the other thing too is as a head coach, I want to make my assistant coaches better. So if they come up with something, they come over and they say, hey, coach, what about this, that, or the other thing? And, it's not correct. I would, I want to be the one to say, okay, listen, great idea. However, look at it this way, boom, bang, bang, and this is what we have. This is why we don't do that. Oh, okay. Now he learned something. Sure. Oh, but and conversely, if he comes to me and he says, what about this, that, or the other thing? And I look and say, well, holy geez, you're right. I just learned something.
Yeah. And that's how this is supposed to work. We're supposed to learn and grow and get better at what we do because what are coaches, but also teachers, right? Teachers. So it's the same thing. So how do I teach better? Well, if I know more, if I know something better, then I can teach it better, whatever. So no, that's fantastic. So yeah, that was a situation where we just game after, I mean, how many games does a JV, take out of COVID times? What is a JV team is playing 20 games, probably 20 games, something like that. And is your number 2 pitcher. So he's probably pitching, at a minimum once a week. So you're talking about 6-7 games probably through the season. This kid's going out there. So this, from the beginning to the end, the guy stuck to his guns. And I don't get it.
Again, it's what we talk about all the time. Number 1, having an open mind. And number 2, having a growth mindset and a lifelong learner. you got to constantly be learning. You have to be open to suggestion. And, I mean, I know me, like the situation that you're talking about, even if I didn't see it and somebody said to me, hey, what do you think? Say, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. What's the worst? It can't be any worse than what you're explaining.
Right.
Let's try it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just, it's funny, but I think we covered a few good stories, and I think there was a lot of good stuff there for people to take away.
I think so. I have my closer, and this one's a little long, so I'll try to make it as brief as possible. But this is the one that probably till the day I die, I will just think back on, and just it's not a bad decision. It's a series of behaviors and bad decisions that just when you think, all right, that's the end of the story, it takes another turn. So I hope it'll be entertaining. I hope it'll be funny in retrospect. Certainly wasn't funny at the time. So,
well, I was
if
just
I
gonna
may,
before you go on, I was just gonna say bad decisions and bad behaviors are two different things miles apart. But go ahead.
yeah. Well, this had all of it.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. It's the levels that we're going to dig down here. Just amazing. The good news is none of it, other than watching adults act like jackasses, none of it was particularly detrimental to the kids, other than in the moment. So, okay. So setting the background, Cal Ripken, at least in our area, I don't know how widespread this was. So they have all-star teams for every age. So every year has their own all-star team. So what they decided to do was give the towns an option if they had, kids that were close to making it, but didn't quite make the team. They set up a separate summer league basically for these kids so they could get some extra playing in, which I thought was a fantastic idea. I think the league asked me to help out with it. And I'm not sure if you were part of that back then, again, because Jimmy and our kids played in the same local town league here. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the story is going to bring back flashbacks for you or not as you hear bits and pieces of it. So I'm not sure if it was you that asked me to help out with them, but it was somebody from the league asked me to help out. And again, at that point, I had been coaching for a couple of years, and I'm happy to. And I knew that the head coach was not an ideal head coach, we'll say. I didn't know it was going to get to this point, but I knew it wasn't a great scenario. So, okay. So I'm helping them. So we're going through so it's myself, these other two guys who, again, I wasn't a huge fan of his coaching style or whatnot, but whatever, we were fine enough during the games. So we're going through the summer and we're playing a couple games and it's fine. We're winning here, losing there, whatever. Everything's going fine. So then that was the year my older son was playing up in Cooperstown. Now, I wasn't a coach on his team, but because of scheduling for work and whatnot, I was going to have to go up with my son. So I'm up there, I'm up at Cooperstown, and we have a game for my younger son team. So now I'm not in the dugout. So they grab another dad to be in the dugout. So there's the three of them in the dugout. And we're up at the Cooperstown, and I think we were out to dinner or something. And all of a sudden I start getting texts. And this is the days before. This is not smartphones. This is just regular old flip phones because this is long enough ago. And I start getting texts from some of the parents on the team. Dave, where are you? Dave, you need to get to the field. They don't know that I'm away with my older son. I'm getting this from multiple parents coming through. My wife starts texting me, "You are not going to believe what's going on here." I'm just like, all right, what the hell is happening here? So, my phone is blowing up. So what happened was there was only one umpire. Okay. It was an older guy, and I think he was umping from behind the plate. So, and this is a smaller field. It's a 50-70 field, not the full size major league field. So he can ump behind the plate and sort of see what's going on in first, second, third. Now, me as a coach, as a parent, as a player, as somebody who's umpired before, when there's only one umpire on the field, right away, automatically, you have to give them more leeway. You have to. They can't be in two places. They can't be right in front of second base and calling balls and strikes. It's inherently impossible. So I guess there was a play at second. Our player was called out, and the one other assistant coach apparently yelled out, "Oh, you owe us one for that one, Blue." Apparently, the umpire warned him at that point, like, hey, I don't need to hear anything from you. And he apparently, this coach, I don't know what he was thinking, but, and you'll probably be thinking that multiple times during this story. So he went back at the umpire a little bit, but it calmed down. Nothing actually happened there. So then there's another play that something got disagreed with. There's another argument from the dugout. And the coach, this assistant coach, gets tossed from the game. Okay. Keep in mind, these are 9 and 10-year-old kids in a non-official game. Right. These are not, this is not, it's not true all-stars. You're not going to play on anywhere. It's just a game.
Right.
9 and 10-year-olds. He gets thrown out of the game. So this other dad who was coaching in place of me, he goes out to first base. So then, so now the one coach is thrown out of the game. And then a little while later, the coach that came in to coach first, he winds up getting tossed from the game.
Oh my God.
Again, for arguing something with the umpire. So now just the manager is left. And something else happens.
And he
gets thrown out of the game. 3, we'll call them adults. For ease of conversation, we'll call them adults. 3 adults get thrown out of a 9 and 10-year-olds kids game that has no implications on anything.
Yeah, because I have another word other than adults, but I'll keep it to myself.
Well, yeah, I'm saying for ease of conversation and to keep it somewhat clean here. Get thrown out of a game on a meaningless game. Game's over. You have no coaches left. Game's over. Game's called. That's it.
Yeah.
Game's over.
Yeah.
The icing on this crap cake of a story, our team was winning.
Right.
So now we forfeit because our coaches got thrown out of the game. So now, like I said, my phone's blowing up. I'm getting partial story because we've got bad reception. I'm up in the mountains and I'm hearing all this. So it takes me a day or two before I can get the rest of the story. So then I come back. So I set up a meeting with these 3 clowns, and because they want to tell their side of the story, and because I'm on the board of directors and because they think we're friendly, which we're a little less friendly now because again, you're finding out about people. I didn't know these guys that well, but so they want to go through me so that I can help them tell their side of the story. So I sit down, we're at one of the guys' houses and we're at the dining room table. I got a little pad in front of me and a pen, and I'm going, okay, I'm happy to hear your guys' side of the story. Before you begin, I'm going to start with this. Okay. I will guarantee I have coached more games than the 3 of you put together.
Right.
Okay. So this is the ground rules we're going to start with on this. As we sit here, I have never been warned by an umpire.
Right.
You 3 got thrown out of the same game, and you want to tell me your side of the story. Go ahead and begin.
Right.
Now, a rational person, which I think we're already beyond that, knowing that these 3 idiots got thrown out of the same game, but a rational person hearing that preamble, maybe would take a second, half a second, take a step back, look in the mirror, and just go, you know what? I screwed up. I'll take whatever punishment is given out to me. Exactly. No. These 3 guys, they double down. And they're going to say, so the one, I think, one of them says, okay, yeah, you've never even been warned. All 3 of us got thrown out of a game. Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it tells me lots, but not in the way you're thinking, because he's thinking, oh, the umpire was so wrong that this had to happen this way. No. First of all, the umpire runs the field. The umpire is in charge. The umpire is the CEO of that game. So yes, you can argue with the CEO of your company. If you argue too vehemently, it is absolutely within the CEO's purview to fire you.
Yes.
It's the same thing here. I don't care. Now I'm getting angry as I'm having this conversation now with that being the response to my, I've never even been warned. And the response being, we'll see what the umpire. No, do you think I've never seen a bad umpire? Do you think I've never seen an unreasonable umpire? Do you think I've never disagreed with a million calls? So anyway, we go back and forth, and it's all like, oh, he was doing this and he was okay, but what were you doing? Okay.
Right.
And it never occurred to you after the first off, one of you getting thrown out, horrible, horrible, horrible message you're sending to the kids and to the other parents and to the other team and that umpire. And if you're bad enough, you're acting in such a way that you're going to get thrown out. And the next one of you is going to then double down and continue on that track so that you didn't learn about what you just saw in front of you. That's not on the umpire.
Right.
So there was a lot of there was, I shouldn't say a lot of back and forth because I just wasn't having it. You know, like I started with the idea, I'm going to go in with an open mind. I'm going to hear it. Now, meanwhile, again, I've heard from multiple parents, not just my wife, because she was there with our son, but all the other parents that told me the story of what happened. And basically everybody had the same version. These guys are idiots.
Right.
Like, yeah, it was a bad call. The guy's also on a 70-foot field from home to second. He's what, 90 feet away, basically at that point?
Yeah.
Like, come on. And then you're going to keep going at this guy? I don't know if you remember. I don't remember if you were still involved in the league at that point.
I might not have been. I don't remember.
Yeah, you may not have been. But that was where, and I'm just sitting there listening to this guy. Well, this guy's, he said this to me. And, you know, the original guy, he's like, oh, well, when I said he owed me one, I was just kidding. I go, you were just kidding. Were you friendly with the guy? Did you know the guy before the game? Had he umpired games for you before? No, because it was in another town. That's the other thing. Keep in mind, this is not, this is our town's team. So think of it like an all-star situation, but it's just not, you're not going to play on for regionals and states and all that stuff. So we're playing another town. And it was like, oh, hometown umpire. Like, yeah, so what? And then again, at the end of the day, by the way, your team was also winning. You caused your kids a loss.
Right. And not to mention you embarrassed the whole damn town.
You embarrassed the whole program. And that's why. And then we wound up doing, I think one of the guys might have gotten banned and the other guy was on like probation the next year. And the other guy was, the one guy who wasn't an official coach and was helping out, he was then not allowed to coach, which he wound up taking his kid and going to another team, which again, when we do our show on parent horror stories of things that we've had to deal with, not as parents, but as coaches and dealing with parents, he's got a couple places on my list of things. And it's one of those situations where I love the kid. The kid is very good friends with my kid. One of the sweetest, nicest kid, but the guy as a coach and as a parent, just terrible, terrible situation. Just ridiculous.
And then people want to know why we can't get enough umpires to officiate the games. Who wants to subject themselves to that kind of abuse for, again, like we've been saying, for games that are totally meaningless. I mean, and that should have nothing to do with it. Right.
That has 1/10 of 1% of doing it. If you're in a tournament and it's a game it's a call that cost you the game, quote unquote, cost you the game, although nothing ever costs you the game because it's a series of all of the plays added up. But yeah, there's no pressure on this game. There's no,
and I'll even argue if it's a tournament game, again, so what? Okay. Maybe if it was a sectional game that, was 1-1 in the bottom of the seventh and, the umpire blew a call. All right. I can understand, getting a little, maybe if it was, you're playing for a state championship, or maybe it's you're in the NCAA and you're playing for the national championship. Okay, these are things that are kind of serious, and certain situations could cause you to get a little upset. But a 9-year-old game in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods somewhere. I mean, come on, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's just, and like I said, what we talked about before, like with the story you gave of the dad who was yelling at his kid and basically pushing him away from the team. Again, there's heat of the moment, and then there's we've all done things in heat of the moment that we wish we didn't do, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, not to necessarily severe degrees, but even to minor degrees. I wish I had handled that a little bit differently, whatever. But days later, in retrospect, you're still gonna hold that
Hey,
dad's case, even 10 minutes after the game was over, that dad should have been like, oh my God, I'm the worst father in the world. I can't believe I just did that to my son. And he was doubling down on his behavior.
right.
This was a couple days later.
Yeah.
They definitely had time to
Yeah.
to have some introspection and reflect and go, wow, I can't believe I did that. Let me throw myself on the mercy of the board and maybe they'll let me coach
Right.
next year. Nope, nope, nope.
Yeah.
He was wrong. I was right.
So
Sticking with it.
Right. Here's how screwed up that is, where my view is that the head or the coaches are the ones that are supposed to stop the parents from doing that.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
And here you have the coaches that are doing it. I think I told you, I've had numerous games throughout my coaching career where a parent will bark at an umpire. Man, you'll see me come out of that dugout, and I'm like, what the hell do you think you're doing? Oh, well, he blew that call. Yeah. I saw it. I know he did. What are you going to do? What do you want me to go beat him up? What do you want me to do? He blew the call.
Right.
All right, let's get a hit. Next batter, get a hit. What do you want me to tell you?
Right. If we hit the ball through and there's not a play, then he can't blow a call. That's the thing. You can't. It's just like anything else where they talk about, this was the play of the game, this saved the game, or this cost us the game. No, it was 7 innings. You can't tell me that one play was the cost of the game. Right. So I hate that stuff.
So I go back to and I'll make it quick because I know we're really running late on time. Okay. So in my parent meeting, I will talk to them about what you just said. Not one play ever loses a game. Okay. Because it's the bottom of the 7th, tie ball game, and little Johnny makes an error at shortstop, and everybody's saying, oh, Johnny lost us the game. But what you forget about is when your little angel came up in the 2nd inning with runners on 2nd, 3rd, and he struck out looking. You don't remember that. You remember the error that Johnny made. And they all kind of get quiet. They look at me and say, listen, what you just said. It's a 7-inning game. If we lose, there's many reasons why we lost the game. It's not because of one play or one call. There's many reasons.
Right. It's accumulation of everything.
Sure.
And I don't care what sport you're in or anything else. It's accumulation of everything. Just like in football, the kicker misses the extra point at the end of the game, which would have won the game, tied the game, or won the game. The kicker blew the game. Well, you had 59 other minutes to do something about it.
Exactly.
So it's a common, easy thought process to have, is that was the game.
Sure.
But it's just never the case. It's just never the case. But anyway, so that was my my biggest, and again, I can find humor in it now. I found some humor in it back then. And it was one of those, just to kind of the last point that I'll put on that game was something you just talked about, like having to deal with the parents and, the parents being the ones to yell at. The funny thing was, I would say at least 90%, if not 100% of the parents on this team knew what the team was. Again, this was not all-stars. This was,
and having a little bit of fun.
They were thrilled that their kids, didn't get selected for all-stars, but somebody took the time and effort to put something together where they were going to get to play a handful of extra games. And that was the thing. It was like, I don't recall having a single issue with a parent, other than the one guy who jumped in, but everybody else, I don't think there was a single issue with the parent on that team. And it was all the coaches. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, the shame of it is that's probably more common than we know at those levels, where it's, Dave, we say it all the time. I just don't know what people think this is about. I really don't. When we had I think it was our second show, we talked about Little League, about the numbers, how there's 6 million kids playing, and then it dwindles down to 500,000 in high school, and then it dwindles down to 50,000 in college. What are we talking about? Let's go out and have some fun.
Right. Like I said, there's a line, there's an age where all of a sudden it's more like it's more serious, and again, it's still a game at its core. So we still want the kids, even in high school and college, they want to have fun, but obviously that, there's a line where the fun versus work sort of flip flops a little bit. But it's certainly not little league age.
Yeah. Not at 9 and 10.
Can't be. Makes me sick.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's the last one that I really wanted to go through. I'm sure, again, as we were sitting here, I thought of a bunch more because and same thing I say in my professional life, where like, I'll never say I've seen it all, but I've seen pretty close to any situation you could throw out at me. And, you start thinking of, oh yeah, I didn't have this, but I had something that was just like that. And you can start going through. Again, I never saw multiple coaches thrown out of a game before or since, which is,
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Which is a good, to the point where your kids now can no longer even play. That was amazing. So I was kind of glad, because they said that was, you got to figure that was 9 or 10 years ago. So it's fun to think of these things now in total retrospective. Like, I can't believe it.
Right.
But,
well, it's making me
stories.
think. It's making me think that I've been away from that the little league. Maybe that's why I don't see that many things, and because I'm getting old, I don't remember all of the things that used to happen. But and again, a big part of it is my maturation as a coach. I live in my dugout. I don't pay attention to what anybody else does, unless it's like what I said in that one story I had. It was glaring in my face. Other than that, do what you want to do. That's your business. I got my boys to worry about.
Yeah. It's tough when we're put in situations where it is right in your face, and now you have a decision to make of, am I saying something? Am I not saying something? Is it something that's, is it hurting the kids physically or mentally or emotionally? And what's the best possible outcome of me going and talking to that guy? And, in the case that you described, there is 0.0 chance that coach, if you went and said something to him, is going, oh, geez, I didn't even realize I was doing that. Thank you, Jimmy. That's like, I will never do it again. There's a 0.0 chance of that happening. It would have turned into a fight.
I might have get hit with a fungo bat.
Right. So so that's I think that's a good wrap on this week's show. Again, want to thank everybody for sticking with us and listening, and volunteer your stories, share them with us. Let us know if you have anything like that you want to share with the group. Reach out to us again on Twitter. We're at the CTB Show. On email, we're using clearingthebases@gmail.com. He's Jimmy Filangiri. I'm David Friedman. And again, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate all the support. And as our listenership just grows every week, it's just it's a wonderful thing to see. And I'll just leave you as I always do. And this is certainly reflective in a lot of the stories that we just told. The only two things you yourself can control at any time is your effort and your attitude. Stay with a positive mental attitude, PMA. Give us 100% effort in everything you do. Good things will follow. Final thoughts, Coach?
Well, I want to just piggyback on that last thing we were talking about the umpires. And I just want to tell everybody out there, the umpire numbers in youth sports on a whole, the numbers are dwindling like crazy. Leave the umpires alone, okay? They're doing something that they enjoy. They want to come out and have a good time. Let's not be too hard on the umpires, especially, the youth levels. We need all of the umpires that we can get. So with that being said, let's always keep in mind, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.